Hello, Barry.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Have you been getting some golf in?
I played this morning, yes.
Oh, right, well done.
Gorgeous day.
Yeah, but the wind was a bit of an issue, I imagine, for you.
No, not terribly.
Oh, right.
It was, I've played in worse, heavier, stronger, something. You get organised.
Right.
I managed to get a haircut last week, which was good timing.
Yeah, yeah. I've just had one, and I've booked ahead, and the date I went for just by chance was the 11th of December.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
the lockdown won't be extended.
No. Well, I've changed where I go to because I've been going to a chap called Muhammad Ali for many years.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to see him in the summer after the lockdown, when they were allowed to open,
Mm-hmm.
he told me just in chatting that he'd been offered the virus test, but he hadn't taken it because it was voluntary. I thought that's not very good business sense, telling your customers that.
No.
And he also had he didn't have a mask on, he had a visor.
Oh.
And I'm not sure that's a good idea. It tends to sort of channel your breathing, it seems to me.
Quite, yes.
Onto the customer.
Nice.
Oh, people are flooding in.
Yes.
Well, I shall go make some coffee then whilst.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah.
Good afternoon to you.
And this is a good afternoon from Dubai.
Looking good.
Yeah, I heard the lockdown on Saturday, got on a flight yesterday and just ran away.
Why not? And what's the COVID situation where you are?
It's fine. It's about 700-800 cases a day. But everybody's sort of committed to wearing masks. You don't feel like anything has changed. So it's just people being more responsible. Masks are everywhere. Take your temperature if you're going into a mall just to check that everybody's okay, and life goes on.
Very good.
So we'll just say sunny afternoon from the garden. So yeah, but we got tested when we got to the airport. It doesn't take more than like 10-15 minutes, and they ask you to stay at home until the result comes out. So hopefully things will be okay. How's everybody?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So I just hope it doesn't get worse in the UK before it gets better.
I'm afraid he's likely to. I'm sure Richard will tell us later.
Yeah. He's already scratching his head as of what he's going to say to all of us.
We've all been watching Dad's Army, where he famously says, "We're all doomed."
We're all doomed.
Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good
afternoon, President.
So, Richard, would you mind giving a quick update a bit later on, the end of the meeting? Thanks.
Oh.
Everybody else keeping all right? What have you all been up to?
I've just been telling everybody that I'm in Dubai now, so.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
I ran away yesterday.
So you didn't have. What was the process in terms of getting there? Did you have to sort of quarantine, or what was going on?
No, nothing. If you do a PCR test before you travel, there's nothing. You just go through immigration and you hand over your certificate and you're out. If you don't have a certificate like mine is, once you finish with immigration, you go do the test and they'll ask you to stay at home until the result comes out 24, 48 hours later.
What about when you come back?
Well, I'm still not sure. That's a very fluent situation. So
Right.
I'm not planning to come back before the end of January. So
Fine.
God knows what happens by the end of January.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, interesting times. I've noticed the flight prices have started to go up now. It seems more countries are easing up, but I want to go to South Africa, and the UK is still classed as high risk, so they're not letting anybody in for any reason.
The airport was absolutely full. I haven't seen the airport like this in quite a few years.
On the UK side?
Yeah. What they were telling me at the airport yesterday is the flight filled up by about 40% between 6 p.m. on Saturday and 10 a.m. on Sunday morning.
It could also be that they've just bunched lots of people to take flights at the same sort of times.
No, it was just people booking at the last minute. So many
Right.
people just decided at the last minute to pack up and leave.
And do they look like holiday makers, business people?
Holiday makers and people just visiting family. Mostly elderly going to visit their kids in Dubai. And it's just like kids were saying to parents, just get on a flight and come over.
Interesting.
A nephew of mine lives in San Francisco and comes to London once a month for 2 days to look after their office there. And he's certainly not doing that at the moment, having 14 days isolation when he gets over here.
Hello, Moira.
Hi, Andy. Nice to meet you.
And you, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Moira.
Hi, Rodney.
Oh, they're the Moira. There's also like Moira too. Yes, hi.
Oh,
You have two Moiras today.
that's very confusing.
Where is he? There's Sandeep there. You got sound from me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, Patrick.
Okay. Just a very quick one before we start. I think I've sorted out how to put audio clips into a PowerPoint for next Monday, if next Monday is going ahead. But perhaps we can sort out afterwards how we're going to do pre-checks on that.
Well, I don't mind doing a test run if you like.
Yeah, please.
We can. I mean, the way I've done it in the past is if you have two devices at home, just put one into a different room, and then just go into a Zoom call and see if it works.
Well,
otherwise we'll just do.
I want to particularly see whether the sound is getting through properly and sound quality.
Yeah, just give me a call.
Music is 550 years old, so.
I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Good.
So what's keeping you busy then, now that you're a man of leisure?
Well, I think we've got a bit of a project for the garden now with lockdown, so I think we can start getting on with some landscaping. So sounds a bit physical work, but I was going to leave it, but I think I might as well get on with it now. So
No golf, Tony.
No golf, no. Although we signed a petition yesterday, Mary signed it, and it was 20,000. By the time I signed it, it was 96,000. Half an hour later, and I think it was up to 250,000 last night. So, and I think if it gets over 100, they have to discuss it in Parliament. I think. So, you know, hopefully golf, although you won't be able to go in the clubhouse, be able to play in twos or something like that. And tennis as well. Hopefully you can play that. They haven't announced about tennis, but we'll see.
Mike Piper will be worried about squash being finished.
Yeah. Well, the tennis club's going to have to close. You know, the golf club will close down again. But you know, hopefully it's only a month, and we can actually start again after that. But
that's not what they're saying now, Tony.
Yeah, I'm doubtful it'll be a month.
Martin knows how long it'll be, but he's not going to tell us.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Get your Easter eggs up.
Tony,
I can't answer, Mr. Trainer, on anything now. I couldn't possibly comment.
It's in the civil service handbook.
Are they going to shut Parliament down? In which
It's a civil
case your
service handbook, isn't it?
petition can't be debated.
Shouldn't think so. They'll find a way.
Or find a way to avoid it, you mean?
Yes.
You've not given an affirmative answer there, Martin.
Yeah, I can't. I'm following the Civil Service Handbook, you know.
Well, it's a bit spooky, really, because what Martin told us back in March, I think it's pretty well spot on with the second wave and all. I mean, it has been absolutely sound that they knew what was going to happen. Still very difficult to plan for, though, isn't it?
It is very for businesses.
He's being very quiet. He's got a smirk. He's got a smirk view on his face.
Sadly.
Okay, we'll make a start. So I'm just going to mute everybody.
Okay.
Tony.
Hi, Des.
Hi.
Okay, that's everybody muted. I'm also going to just give access to Moira for sharing her video. Okay, that's done. So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Leicester Rotary Club. Today, the 2nd of November 2020. Do we have any guests with us today? I'm just looking around. We have Moira. We'll be introducing Moira in just a sec. Okay, no other guests. And do we have any greetings from other clubs? Yes, Richard.
Yes, I bring you greetings from various members of Kew Gardens, Bristol, Leeds and Leeds White Rose. Had a Zoom meeting last week with Jim Onions, who's something to do with RGB&I International. Anyway, basically this is a part of an initiative to promote international collective sort of Rotary projects, and there's a sort of tentative view to actually chartering an international club. So we've got 3 districts in UK, so ours, and then 4 districts, sorry, interested. It's very much in its gestation at the moment, but anyway, just it's I think it is of interest. It's basically on the back of our Guimarães link, because Portugal is one of the areas where we're looking to have a much closer country-to-country link. So that's what that was about.
Sounds interesting. What would an international club involve? Is it online?
A very good question. That was, I think, pretty loose is the answer to that. Jim was talking about sort of trying to charter something by the end of the year, and it's all be obviously virtual. I think obviously ultimately when if and when life sort of gets back to some degree of normality, it would involve cross-country visits, a bit like what we've done with Guimarães, but just on a more multi-club scale rather than just individual clubs. I think that's the concept, and also obviously doing projects together.
Oh, sounds interesting. Yeah, please keep us updated.
Yeah, I will do. Yeah.
Great. Any other greetings from other clubs? Okay. Obviously, we've got the new lockdown that's been announced, which we'll come back to towards the end of the meeting. So a couple of things I mentioned last week. One was the potential to have a sort of a curry night to raise some money that Tara was looking to organise. We've put that on pause now. Obviously, the restaurants are all closed and we have to abide by all the rules. We'll see how things pan out, and we'll do our best to try and get things back on track when we can. So there we are. Do you have any notices, Mr. Secretary, Barry?
No.
Okay. Did you have a nice week off, Barry?
Sorry, was that to me?
So did you have a nice week off? You were away last week.
I played golf in at Wollerton Park in Nottingham, which is very interesting because the course is full of deer and it's rutting season. So you had to be very careful. The stags get very excited.
Very good. Okay, anything else from other committee chairman? Okay, all right. So at this point, we'll go straight into our talk. We have Moira Penny, the District 1070 Safeguarding Officer, who will be talking to us about safeguarding in current times. You'll just need to go ahead and unmute yourself, Moira, from your side. there'll be a little thing in the bottom left of your screen.
There we go.
There we go.
I'll just get myself organised here, I think. Oh,
Yeah, I'll set your slides up to share, so you shouldn't have any problems.
I don't quite know what's happening. Just be with you in a moment.
Sure, take your time.
Yeah. Can you all see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's quite interesting that you're talking to James Onions. We worked together with him. 6 of us worked together with him in 6 clubs, and did a joint sand dam project with him a number of years ago, which worked out quite well. So he's an interesting person to do business with, but we certainly, you know, were successful in that. And just to say hello from the Rotary Club of St Ives at the same time. My name is Moira Penny. I'm the District Safeguarding Officer, and you may have heard part of this talk before, and I don't actually make any apologies for that. In fact, I'll be quite pleased if some of you have heard what I have had to say. The principles of safeguarding, you know, remain the same. But if I just introduce the district compliance team, that comprises the District Safeguarding Officer, who's now Will Cowell, and myself as the District Safeguarding Officer. And Kate Haythornthwaite will be taking over from me in the summer. So she'll be the new District Safeguarding Officer. And I think she's got quite a lot of experience in presenting herself. So I think she'll be a very exciting new addition to the team. The district compliance team forms part of the district secretariat, and that sits under John Danel, just so that you know where that is. The district compliance team, our job is to get out and about around the district and talk about safeguarding and compliance, or of course, as it is at the moment, we Zoom around the country. But we'd like to see everybody encouraged to discuss and debate all subjects of compliance together. The presentation is really just a brief overview of the issues surrounding safeguarding. It's just a taster, and we just like to give people an insight into the responsibilities that we all have. It's a concentrated view, if you like, of the Rotary policies and the current legislation, and of course the current times. It incorporates part of the training that all the district compliance officers have undertaken to deliver advice, and includes our own experiences and examples of situations that have arisen on occasions. There's a bit of reference to the current situation that we all find ourselves in a bit later in the presentation, but it sticks to the essentials of safeguarding, and that is in relation to Rotary, just to maintain clarity on the principles. Do ask questions as you go along. If we don't cover everything today, then you know we can answer questions on other things at another time, but do participate if you would like to. We've all got differing expertise, ranging from those of us who have professional experience in safeguarding children or vulnerable adults in the past, and those of us who have got none at all. But everybody is continually assessing and reassessing situations and the risks involved, whether we realise that we're doing it or not. So just to remind us all what safeguarding is, it's a term used to denote the measures to protect the health and well-being and the human rights of individuals, in particular children, young people and vulnerable adults, to live free from harm, abuse and neglect. And who's responsible? Well, actually, we all are. Everybody's responsible for safeguarding, and that's in the eye of the law. And it's not just children and vulnerable adults, but to a lesser extent, it's ourselves and those people who we work alongside. It's important that everybody has fun and feels secure and protected in everything that we do as Rotarians. All clubs should have a safeguarding officer. Otherwise, the responsibility of safeguarding will fall to the president. And Parmdeep, I'm sure you wouldn't want that, but I think it's Michael, isn't it, who looks after safeguarding and health and safety in your club for you all. We all, as individual members of our clubs, have to be aware of our responsibilities and know how to respond to a safeguarding concern, and make sure that safeguarding has been included in all our risk assessments for every event that we run. And I'm just going to focus more on concerns and disclosures today. We should be aware of the types of abuse and indicators of abuse and know what to do if a disclosure is made to us. As Rotarians, the things that we do and the events that we run may put us in the position that someone from a vulnerable group, whether they be a child or an adult, might just on one rare occasion decide to trust us enough to disclose something that causes us concern about their safety, or behave or maybe have an appearance that raises some warning in our minds that something's just not quite right. And it's really important that we should raise our concerns. I don't think anybody has forgotten the investigations into the cases of Victoria Climbié, which is 2002, it's quite a long time ago now, and Baby P, that's Peter Connolly, in 2007. And those investigations concluded that although there were many agencies involved with these children, they actually failed to recognise the signs of abuse and didn't actually know what to do with their concerns. And if some joined up thinking perhaps had been used, their tragic deaths might have been avoided. So everybody has got their part to play in preventing abuse. And some of today's legislation has come about as a result of those dreadful cases. So very quickly, you can read for yourself what the definitions of a child and a vulnerable adult. Sometimes vulnerable adult in need is sometimes a term that is used, but you know, terminology is always being altered and updated. So just a quick slide that shows a whole raft of legislation upon which safeguarding guidelines are set out. It's just only some of them. And then of course we have our own policies as well. So all of the subjects of compliance are really tightly interwoven, and we need to recognise all of these different things when we're planning our events or when we're writing our risk assessments. There's also a revised RIBI safeguarding manual. It was revised last year and it's available on the RGB&I website. It was reviewed in consultation with the Rotary Youth Exchange Association. And actually, if you've never seen it, it's quite a helpful document, but it's quite a lot of it. Again, that's all available on the RGB&I website, so do look it up and have a look at it. I don't know whether you're all signed up to My Rotary, but there's an awful lot of information there if you're looking for some stuff, or if you've got nothing else better to do on a wet afternoon. So the other thing, this is quite a good idea to slip this in and update things. We have now got new guidelines on how we should conduct ourselves if we have a requirement to communicate online with children or vulnerable people. Really, you don't want to do this if you can avoid it. You know, it's better to find another way. But if you have no option, there are now guidelines about this. Fundamentally, it says, I've got a copy of it here. So if you have a copy of that, fundamentally, Rotarians shouldn't have one-to-one calls with youngsters or vulnerable people. At least one parent, guardian, carer must be in presence of the child or the vulnerable adult during the call at all times. And I would suggest, if you're going to do it, then have another Rotarian besides you as well. I think that would be a sensible thing to do. This advice is based on the RGB&I safeguarding policies, on GDPR, and also on information from the NSPCC, who have an article on undertaking, or guidelines on undertaking remote teaching safely. The guidelines issued by RGB&I are very, very specific, and you should all have had access to this from your club secretaries. They were issued in August this year. You need to follow these guidelines and any guidelines from school or other institutions if you're asked to do that. And I'll come back to those a bit later on. So just coming back more to this, and just remind ourselves about the 5 main types of abuse, or the 5 main categories. So that's physical abuse, neglect, emotional and psychological abuse, sexual and financial abuse. And under those categories fall many others, for example, coercion, cyberbullying and modern slavery, and also concerns that somebody might be drawn into radicalisation. And the terms apply equally to children and adults in need, and they refer to either suffering from or at risk from, which is quite important that is that you note that. And it can be perpetrated by anybody. It can be perpetrated by friends, relations, volunteers, strangers actually quite rarely, I think, carers, singly, in groups. And signs of abuse, well, these are just a few examples just for you to read through. They include other things, for example, like hoarding or self-neglect. It could be signs of abuse. And they also could apply to anybody who's been bullied or intimidated or harassed. So again, if you look up on My Rotary, there's a lot of information there if you want to look it up and have a bit more of a read. So what should we do if we have got a concern? Well, the RGB&I Safeguarding Manual on page 44 gives guidelines on this. So in brief, you need to stay alert, to recognise anything that seems out of whack, that's just not right. Use your common sense. Most situations are not going to involve the possibility of abuse. And so therefore, if you talk to a parent, carers or school to clarify your initial concerns, that might be all that's needed. You need to stay calm and reassure the person, and then record what you've seen or heard as soon as possible so that you can remember properly. You need to keep it secure, to date, time, place, and sign it, and make sure that it can be clearly understood, because it could be used in an investigation. You should be raising your concerns. If you've got a worry, then say something. To whom you'll report will depend on the circumstances. You will need to share information in an appropriate fashion. Maintaining confidentiality is important, and you should talk to your safeguarding officer. And importantly, you should challenge poor practice. If somebody, whether they're a Rotarian or otherwise, isn't conducting themselves in a manner that you would deem appropriate, you should do or say something. So what shouldn't you do? Well, most importantly, you shouldn't put yourself at risk of harm, or anybody else for that matter. If somebody was to collapse in front of you, you wouldn't just dive straight in. You'd stop, you'd look around, you'd have a bit of a think, and then you'd do something, wouldn't you? So just check for danger first. You shouldn't investigate yourself. You shouldn't take any photographs. You shouldn't make any promises, because the chances are you're going to break them anyway. You shouldn't give any opinions, ask any leading questions, or disturb any evidence. Again, it could be used in an investigation going forward. So who do you inform? If you've got a safeguarding concern, the pathway to reporting that concern is quite prescriptive, and it's clearly laid down. Bearing in mind that each case is individual, so you're going to have to, use a bit of your own common sense. It could be an allegation against a Rotarian or a volunteer, or it could be a disclosure made to us by a vulnerable person. The instructions are to follow your organisation's protocols. As far as Rotary is concerned, you must inform your club safeguarding officer. They will inform the district safeguarding officer, who then will discuss with the RGB&I compliance officer, who is Peter King at the moment. And he'll think about the next steps that should be taken. It could be that district secretary might get involved, or the district governor, and of course social care or anybody else required to ensure the well-being and safety of an individual will always be contacted. There's advice and telephone numbers easily available on the local authority website, either adult or child, and social care would always be the lead authority, the lead agency in any investigation, and they have an out-of-hours emergency contact number. You pick up the phone to contact the police or the ambulance service only if there's an immediate danger, a criminal offence or a medical emergency. So very briefly, you need to recognise the abuse or the disclosure, respond appropriately and reassure, report your concerns, record what you have seen or heard. And just coming back to those new online guidelines that I mentioned before, if you have had any concerns about the health and safety of a young person on the online call that you've had, so that might be any odd behaviour on the call, heard any inappropriate comments, or spotted that the participant is trying to tell you that something's wrong, you just go back and raise those concerns in the fashion that we've just been talking about. So just to recap, we shouldn't be put off or worried about the things that we want to do as Rotarians because of a lack of understanding of the safeguarding issues. But we should be better informed, more aware, and prepared to openly discuss the subject. You know, talk about it at club meetings. You know, any concerns or examples that come up, talk about it. It's a good thing to do. So beware of confidentiality. Be prepared to share your concerns. Follow best practice. Complaints related to inappropriate behaviour often arise from misunderstanding. We all have to use our common sense. We shouldn't be alone with a vulnerable person. If necessary, ask a carer, a relative, or an appropriate qualified member of staff to help us. If we were to find a lost child in the supermarket, for example, we wouldn't desert them, but on the other hand, you wouldn't want anybody to misunderstand your intentions, and you'd attract somebody else's attention rather than be alone with a child. A momentary lapse in judgment, a spontaneous kindly gesture, or a friendly arm across the shoulders, or an inadvertent pat on the backside might never have been given a second thought within our own generations, perhaps in the past. But these days, it might be interpreted in a totally different fashion by younger generations. But if we treat everybody as we'd like to be treated ourselves, with care, respect and dignity, we shouldn't go far wrong. So again, make sure you've got a club safeguarding officer. When you're planning your events, think about the what ifs and try and mitigate any foreseen risks. Use your risk assessments to eliminate any need for DBSs if you can, just remove the risks. We've all been very good about our risk assessments, and I think our insurance company has been quite pleased with the approach that we have made as Rotarians, but we do need to make sure that our risk assessments are always up to scratch. And the district compliance team is always around to help. So just, you know, put your plans put your plans on paper so people can read if they need to. So now, just to bring us all up to date. So the elephant in the room, I'm calling it. I guess we all know what we mean. Where I think we all have to acknowledge the enormous changes in our life and routines over the past year due to COVID. Our responsibilities haven't diminished, and in fact, they may well have increased. For those of us who are able to go about our business with less restrictions, you might have been volunteering in your community, either as a Rotarian or not. We know from what we've heard in the news that there's been an upsurge in domestic abuse cases due to additional pressures on couples and families due to lockdown and now another lockdown. So there might be a greater chance that we might recognise some signs of abuse, or somebody might disclose a confidence about something that has occurred that we ought to report. However, it has to be said that many of us have found that it's impossible to carry on our Rotary practices that we're accustomed to, either because we might be vulnerable ourselves or because what we've been doing has been halted for the time being. It doesn't prevent us making plans for a new normal or for a rapid relaunch when things calm down a bit. We're all learning to adapt and find different approaches to achieving our goals. We're adapting existing events or finding new events more suited to the restraints of social distancing, for example. Practical solutions to social distancing will need to be built into our risk assessments for all our events, with a COVID assessment added as well. The latest RGB&I newsletter that came out this week, it summarised much of the discussion that the district compliance teams from right around the country in the UK, including somebody from Gibraltar and from Jersey, it was held early on last week, where the experience and the expertise were brought together to be shared with everybody. And there's quite a lot of useful advice as a result of that discussion last week in the newsletter. Each club has to find a way of moving forward and find different ways of managing events with whatever the current guidelines might be at the time, to enable them to self-guard themselves and everybody else. It's vital that we maintain the confidence of our members and our supporters. It might be interesting to note that many of our communities are holding open Zoom meetings and they're inviting everybody to join them. They relate to the things that our communities are passionate about, for example, the environment. And it's a wonderful opportunity for local Rotary clubs to join them and find out what they can do to help. And you can do that without actually leaving home. So it's quite a good way to connect with your community. I don't know whether you have any need for DBS checks. Do you do any DBS checks? Do you need to do them?
Not that I'm aware of. There might be one or two things I'm not aware of.
Yes, I think those who were those who are involved in the saleability have to have a full GBS checks regularly, because you're physically handling people with disabilities, putting them out of their chairs and putting wraps on.
Okay.
So that's a sort of annual check which needs to be done. Okay.
Well. The criteria. This is the criteria for a DBS check, and it's all down to the frequency of contact. So this is quite, it is the way it is. If you apply for DBS check for other reasons, then it can be classed as being illegal. So it is the frequency of contact will be once a week or more, 4 days in any 30-day period, or contact between 2 AM and 6 AM, so an overnight stay. You shouldn't, if you're going about DBS, you shouldn't muddle good safeguarding practices with DBS certification, because a DBS check isn't a guarantee of the good standing of an individual. It's just a glimpse at one moment into any outstanding criminal or safeguarding issues. Just because somebody raises a hand to volunteer for something doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most appropriate person for the job. But of course, we know that there's never too many volunteers usually. But it takes about 14 days for us to get DBS checks through. So if you do need them, just let us know. But we have to do ours by post. We're not allowed to do them online at the moment. And just very quickly, just so you know, if you do get a DBS check, a new DBS done, if you register it online for the update service, that will mean that you can carry on your DBS, and anybody else who's interested in it, you can give them their certificate, your certificate number, and they can check whether it's still okay or not, which saves a lot of paperwork and time. So that's that. So all I'd just like to say is thank you very much for asking me to talk to you today. And if you have any interests or any subjects that you'd like information from the either from the compliance team or actually from the district team, we're very happy to incorporate those into anything that you know, any district events that are put out during the year. And so, you know, we're very happy to know what people would like to know more about and whether we can bring other speakers in for you. So thank you very much. That's it. Anything to ask me?
Thank you, Moira. Do you have any questions from members? And if you have a question, could you please unmute yourself and go ahead? Moira, if you could just turn off your presentation mode, and then we can...
Have I come out? I think I should have come out. Oh, hang on, let me just stop share. There we are. That's better.
Okay, well, I'll take a question. We're looking to work with students between the ages of 18 and about 22, I guess. In terms of the policies there, I mean, how much of an overlap would there be between the young adults and the under 18s you're talking about, or is there no overlap?
Once they got to their 18th birthday, you shouldn't need it.
Yeah, okay, fine. All right, thank you.
Unless they're vulnerable, of course.
Not that I'm aware.
No.
Any questions from members? No? Okay, you've done a fantastic job, Moira. Thank you very much. I will now just pass on to Richard. If Richard would like to give us a few words on state of play, COVID and lockdown.
Yes, well, I mean, in terms of the actual, you know, where things are locally, the testing sort of fluctuates up and down. As far as the hospital is concerned, it's still functioning, at least it was on Friday, more or less as normal in terms of elective work and everything else. There has been a slow but steady rise in the number of cases actually in hospital, and a small rise in those who've died either with or of COVID-19. But it's still not by any stretch of imagination approaching the situation it was in the spring. I mean, as far as the lockdowns, because I mean, one would assume, and it is only an assumption because nobody knows about these things, but being a predominantly upper respiratory viral infection, that it will continue to increase through the winter months and then tail off again in the spring. The problem that the NHS has is, I mean, 40 years ago, I was doing my house job at Epsom District Hospital in medicine, and we had a winter bed crisis, and that was 40 years ago, and things haven't changed since. And the last 2 years in UHL, we haven't done any elective orthopedics from January through to March. So it's you know, that is the standard winter situation, because the NHS runs on about a 90% occupancy, whether it's ITU or any beds, and in the summer these tend to be slightly under occupied, and in the winter they tend to be over occupied. So I think it's disingenuous when they say, oh well, the ITU beds are 90% full. Well, I mean, that's normal. That's just the way it is. So I think the reality is, I think the concept of come December the 2nd, we'll all go back to a nice pre-Christmas get-togethers and rush, I think is being a tad optimistic. I mean, the reality is that come beginning of December, there will still be quite a lot of COVID around. There will probably be people dying, and we will be entering the normal winter stresses that the NHS has. So I can't, in all honesty, see that changing now much through the winter. I hate to bring a gloomy news, but I mean, I may be wrong, but I would suspect that's the way it's going to be. And I'm particularly distressed that we can't play golf, because I had my I had a game booked for Thursday, so I've just missed out by 3 hours. But anyway, there we go. No, I mean, seriously though, for those who've got businesses and everything else, I think it must be absolutely catastrophic for them. But you know, it's the way it is the strategy that is being done. I don't know those of you who watched the presentation on Saturday. I mean, I think I'm a not unintelligent scientist, but I have to say I did struggle with the variety and array of graphs and things that were put up, that all that one could notice that there seemed to be an awful lot of steep lines and steep curves, which are presumably designed to put the fear of God into everybody, which presumably successfully did. But you know, I mean, the reality is that there will be an increase in this over the next few months, and I just, you know, just locally at the moment it seems to be not bad at all, and we're coping pretty well. But you know, hope that will stay that way. I don't think there's really much, an awful lot else I can really say, because I can't think anything else is going to change very much.
Okay, John.
Thanks, Parmdeep. I had a phone call from Brian Groves this morning, and he asked me to, well, he sends his best regards for a start. Still hasn't explained why he never comes, but there you go. Some sad news for those who were members in the early 1990s. One of our past members, Barry Pearson. Some of you will remember him. Sadly, he passed away on Friday. He was the chief fire officer for Leicestershire. He came down from Manchester and he looked after Leicestershire for quite a while. His main claim to fame was that he ran the rescue package for the passengers on the aircraft that crashed on the M1 when landing at East Midlands Airport. He was one of the first ones on scene, and he ran the whole project. A very nice guy, and sad to hear that he's gone.
Oh, that's sad to hear. Thanks for updating us, John. So he didn't give you any reasons why he hasn't been coming to the meetings. I should give him a call, actually. I've spoken to him for quite a while.
Be a good idea.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Richard? Was that a question, Nick? No? Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, it's not a question. It was something I'd like to say before we close.
Yes, go ahead.
It's just that the meeting that we've got planned for membership at 2 o'clock, those of you who are planning to be there, if there's any chance, could we start it a little earlier? I've just realized I have to relinquish the computer here at 10 to 3. Otherwise my wife won't play bridge, and that just cannot be.
Yes, that's fine. Fine with me. I'll be on early, so we can make a start.
Okay. What, about 10 to?
I'm available straight after this, so I'll just join in and make a start whenever. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I'll just, if everybody could just unmute themselves, and we can, oh, just before we do that, you can please go ahead and unmute yourselves. But before we finish up, just want to mention next week, attendance today is 24, which is very good. And next meeting, we've got Patrick, our very own Patrick Boylan, who's going to be talking about turning just 3 500-year-old facts into a full biography of Leicester's greatest composer, Hugh Aston. So I have that correct, Patrick? Yes, I think. I can't hear you, Patrick, but you'll need to unmute yourself, mate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes. I hope I'll have, as I was saying before the meeting started, I think I've found how to put some music into prayers. Presentation. So, with luck, you may hear a couple of pieces of Aston's work.
Oh, great!
And also learn about the woman who the King of France said was the greatest whore in the whole of Europe.
Nice. Well, on that note, we'll end the meeting. So good luck to you all, and see you all next week.